Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. For that conversation on how Nigerian real estate businessmen are working hard to provide low-cost but comfortable housing for millions of Nigerians in their need of that basic need, we're now turning to Jumoke Fashanu, Managing Director of First Home Mortgage Brokers Limited. She will also be offering a bit of education on the question of mortgage as a way of achieving that objective. Welcome to the program. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes,
pleasure.
Madam, let's start with something that everybody talks about. They say there is a housing deficit in Nigeria, a deficit of about 17 million. But the other day I was with someone who should know, and he was saying that the federal government, particularly the Federal Ministry of Works and Housing, is considering a housing audit in Nigeria. That whereas we say there is a housing deficit, but if you look around, there are many unoccupied buildings, particularly if you go to the villages or to the rural areas. So many people in the urban areas, they have a house that is supposed to be an equivalent of an eventual graveyard, that they keep there. They don't go there. Maybe they go once a year. True. And you have many of these houses. And then you have many buildings that are also locked up all over the place. And yes, we say there is a housing deficit. How do we define it,
Yes.
in the absence of a housing audit?
Thank you very much. I would say that it's actually a collective responsibility. 1, for government. 2, for individuals who are Nigerians. 3, for all the stakeholders. The stakeholders are take, for instance, Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, the mortgage banks, family home funds, NMLC. The government on its part they're very proactive because in the mortgage sector, I've been in the mortgage sector for decades. So I know that we understand that there's been a whole lot of gap. And it's going to take several years and effort for us to get to where developed economies currently are. And I say it's a collective response because even Nigerians do not understand what mortgage is. I have seen people who are quite educated. They call me, I want a mortgage to buy a car. Do you understand? So it's the responsibility of Nigerians to even, first of all, understand the options that are available. For the reason why, yes, you will call this is urban, people are moving towards where the jobs are. Indeed, there are some houses in the localities that are not dwelt in. But the truth of the matter is there is actually an housing deficit. Now, what the progressive way to attack this is 1, try understand what the needs are. What are the needs? Currently, a lot of the people that do need mortgages do not even understand the options that are available for them. What are the options that are available? Any Nigerian, 18 years old and above, whether the formal sector or the informal sector, you have access to some forms of regular income. They're actually products that you can benefit from. You will agree with me that I'm sure it applies to every other sector because Nigeria is so large. If you ask me, I think we are almost like about 5 different countries, do you understand, just together in one. So if you need something and you don't know where to go to, you'll be living in denial that is not available. Mortgage is available, and as the people within the informal sector are being drawn into this net, the impact is going to be felt very much.
We're definitely going to talk more about that National Housing Fund, but before we get into that, I want to ask you a question.
Yes.
I find, especially when I'm talking to millennials, that a lot of the goals of my generation and above are completely different. You get to a certain age, you want to get married, you want to have children, then you want to buy a house. That's all part of the dream that everybody aspires to. But I find that a lot of younger people feel home ownership is passé. They feel, why should they invest in owning a home, especially in a city such as Lagos, for example? You spend so much money and really you're investing in a slum. The road outside is a mess. People think they might as well just rent. But I still believe in home ownership. What would you say to those people?
Thank you. I think that's your question. You've been able to capture what would take me so long to try and get to. The last study I saw from the Lagos Business School defines Nigeria as having the largest population of the millennials in the whole world. That means as a country, if we're very serious, those people are the people every business person needs to focus upon. Now, what their needs are and what their preferences are. In our generation, we long for large homes. Do you understand? Upstairs, downstairs, 7 bedrooms. Their needs are very minimal. And you'll find out that there in a lot of cities in the United States, that people of the same, assuming you belong to the TV sector, you find 10 of you sharing a large duplex. You don't need more than your room and the communal living places. Do you understand? So optimally, then they do not deny that they do need to have their own home. But the truth is, what is available is not built to meet their needs. And that's part of the reason why I think until we understand what they're saying is, number one, they don't have the patience. I'm sure your parents built a house over, say, 20 years. My mother built hers over 17 years. Unfortunately, she died before she could even live in there. Most likely, you to your first home, you must have built it over 10. Do you understand? So they don't have that kind of timing. And that's the more reason why every mortgage product we're building now is actually built to take in their consideration that their monies do not come in en masse bulk money. Their monies are gradual monies. That's number one. Number two, the kind of structures they need. You find new couples now. And that's why developers, I understand, are no longer building 7-bedroom houses. They're no longer even building 3-bedroom houses. You'll find that the properties that really go very fast are the 1-bedroom studio flats. That's all they need. And they don't intend to have their mothers-in-laws living with them or fathers-in-laws living with them. Do you understand? So that, I think, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Yes.
Thank you. And, you know, mortgage adoption is becoming more of a culture in Nigeria day by day. More people are getting access to mortgages, finding out about mortgages, etc. But people still have the problem of extremely high interest rates that turn people away from mortgages and the idea of mortgages as a whole. I think the last I heard, it was at about 18%. Correct me if I'm wrong. Now, when you have that situation ahead of you in your future projections as you're planning for your new home, etc., how do you really take that step forward and say, you know what, I am going to get that mortgage? Okay,
I'll take your question has about two parts. The number one part is the affordability of the interest rate. Indeed, there is a most affordable is through the National Housing Fund. It's 6% per annum. 6% per annum. The cost that is even the associated cost that now makes it even higher. The cost of perfection, the insurance, there are a lot of associated costs. But what exactly are the options? The options are, number one, and that's actually a challenge. A lot of Nigerians do not want to live where they can afford. There are products that we have that can make you collect your keys in 60 days. Once we ascertain your affordability, those are the kind of houses you can afford, plus all the associated costs. But a lot of people will not want those houses. So the interest rate and then the refinancing at 18% is still a lot of gap from, I think some years ago, my first mortgage that I took was about close to 29%. That was really very high. Do you understand? So now the smart way to look at mortgage is because the first property I bought by mortgage, sincerely, at 29% per annum, there was no way I could live inside that property. So what I did was to put in a tenant. Do you understand? So the renters was helping me pay the mortgage, and the house appreciated in value, and I got out of the loan. So I think it's, number one, information, access to information. Number two, individuals being conscious of the fact that mortgage is here in Nigeria, it is real, and just avail yourself, you understand, and don't be misled. So I think that would be very helpful.
Well, I mean, as someone who is involved in housing finance,
yes.
What are the big challenges that you have seen? She mentioned culture.
Yes.
Part of the Nigerian culture is that, you know, when you are a landlord, you want to be sure that you are a landlord. Not that you are a landlord and you are still a debtor. And you still have to pay, you know, if anything happens, the house is taken away from you. What are the major challenges you've seen beyond culture?
Yes.
And the fear of debt?
Yes, and
because some people will say their religion does not allow them to owe money.
Yes, and you know, number one is culture is a basic thing. And the industry has actually been very proactive about understanding the culture. The fact that you say you can't deny people their culture. One, people used to be afraid to take the mortgage. They still classify it as the meaning. That's one. Number two, if a man takes a mortgage and does housewarming and everything, the wife will insist nobody knows, and that's part of what is limiting the growth of mortgage. If everybody that has taken a mortgage can boldly come out the way I've said, I have taken several mortgages, paid one, take another one. But people look at it, they would rather, if you're doing housewarming, you call us for housewarming for your property in Lekki, your flat in Lekki, honestly, you want to pretend to us that you carried the money in a Ghana must go bag to pay 25 million naira. You won't want to own up that I took it by mortgage. So I think that's number one limitation. If people testify about their successes, it will encourage others to come in. So aside, and then there's a mortgage assurance, which is now very compulsory. Some years ago, it was not compulsory, but we had to work with the insurance sector to create a product so that people can be rest assured that if a man or a woman takes a mortgage and he dies, the responsibility, the obligation falls on the insurance company and you don't lose anything. I would say part of the deterrent to growth of mortgage is the cost of perfection. Oh my God, it is still so high. It's about 10%. Do you understand? So that is a limitation. Number two, the delay in getting titling, that titling. Currently, let me use this opportunity. When they talk about constitutional review, everybody jumps and gets so excited. They think it has to do with politics. It's not all about politics. There's so many things that are in the Constitution that you cannot amend until you talk about. So I would say, for instance, the land use issue should be taken out of the Constitution. I think so. So that way, the government and stakeholders can tinker with it. Do you understand? Every land in Nigeria belongs to the government. That is granted. But it has to, there's a country, I think it's Kenya, that every part of their growth is because they also have those kind of kiosks, those small shops. And they did a titling procedure that once you own one, you could actually get a title to it. If you have that, the house you live in, assuming currently is worth 30 million naira, I'm sure you don't have a certificate of occupancy. No, one, because of the cost, two, because of the issues and challenges. And you run a business that you just need like 3, 4, 5 million as a working capital. Why on that should you be living in a property worth 30 million naira? Do you understand? And there's nothing you can do because you can't take your property to any institution to get for onward lending. You understand? So the titling is a challenge. Number 4 is the fact that people who do not know end up misleading those even have a brief idea. Do you understand? I'm sure you're in your barber's place or your salon, you say you have a few headache. She will name 7 drugs that you should take. Do you understand? Nigerians were very opinionated. And because we're confident in our opinion, we mistake that for being knowledgeable about something. So I think people should keep an open mind. The fact that you may not have taken any mortgage before does not mean people are doing it. Unfortunately, the people who really need it.
Madam, let's take a short commercial break.
Thank you.
And then we'll come back to the conversation. It's becoming really interesting.
Yes, it really is.
Don't go away. You're still watching The Morning Show here on Arise News.
Welcome back to The Morning Show here on Arise News. We're still with Jumoke Fashanu, Managing Director of First Home Mortgage Brokers Limited. So let's talk about equity. We were discussing that during the break.
Yes.
How much equity do you need to have to deposit for your mortgage? Because that's another impediment. A lot of people don't feel they can't reach that level of savings.
Okay. Averagely, industry standard is 30%. And we use the model that is applicable even in Canada. But their products, take for instance, Federal Mortgage Bank is very responsive to the fact that they're first and foremost not even a profit-earning organization, but an arm of the government to be able to be the process flow for home ownership, affordable home ownership. So for properties 5 million naira and below, you don't even need any equity contribution now. Do you understand? So, and then the other one is 10%. Really, what people should focus more about is to get the understanding that mortgage will not work if you suddenly wake up today and you're just irritated with your landlord and you call me that you want a mortgage. Mortgage is something that you really need to plan for. If you plan for it, you work towards saving your equity contribution. That's number 1. Number 2, so for people whose affordability are very low, you don't need to have any equity contribution. So, and then if it's 30%, you work towards it. And the good thing about 30%, assuming you key in a mortgage with a property of 10 million naira, 5 years that your equity contribution is 3 million, that's 30%. 2, 3, 4, 5 years afterwards, the value appreciates by 100%. The value of your 30%, which was 3 million, is now 30% of that increased value. Do you understand? So it also falls back as a buffer, as an instrument for investment, also for you as well.
Brilliant. And you know how we're speaking about affordable housing, and you mentioned how a lot of young people and millennials prefer now to live in studio apartments or 1 or 2 bedroom places. And it brings up the discussion of like prefabricated homes, containers, and other means of housing that are starting to be used or have been used around the world. Now, what is the mortgage community also doing to kind of encourage contractors to look into building affordable homes using these measures that we see being used to create cheaper houses all around the world?
Thank you. Number one, I think developers and the stakeholders are aware that this alternative building maximizes raw materials, the turnaround time, the technologies that could develop 100 homes in 2 weeks. But the problem is the fact that Nigerians still love bricks and mortar. There's been testing some alternative houses. They're so reluctant. So I would think that what the stakeholders need to do, the mortgage banks, the financial institutions that have mortgage desks, should invest in research and particularly empowerment, training people. It's obvious that we Nigerians need to be retrained, that there's nothing that the cement, the cost of bricks and mortar is doing for you. A lot of these alternative technologies, number one, the power usage is reduced. Don't forget, we're talking about green economy now because of the climate change. So it's even good for the society. So basically, people are reluctant to embrace it. It's not that the alternative things are not there.
Well, still on challenges, is there a challenge of access to mortgage in Nigeria? Because, you know, the CBN in September 2018 licensed, I think, 34 primary mortgage banks, but most of these are concentrated in Lagos. About 56% of them are in Lagos. So in terms of coverage, is there a restriction in terms of access?
I would say that the concentration as to be in Lagos is because Lagos is probably where the elites are. I would say that within the subsector, we're understanding now there are a lot of collaborations. Take, for instance, as a mortgage broker, we have MOUs with a lot of the mortgage banks, a lot of the even deposit money banks. Do you understand? And without having an office outside Lagos, I don't have an office outside Lagos, but we have collaborations with people who we have trained to represent us all over Nigeria. So really, I do not think that access is a challenge. What I think is a challenge is the fact that a lot of the stakeholders still think that what this sector needs is, assuming my mortgage bank is Jumoke Fashanu mortgage bank, just be shouting on the radio, be shouting on TV. And I've told them, mentioning the name of a particular company cannot help this sector. What will help the sector is for the stakeholders within the sector come together, fund empowerment program where you teach people, unveil the mortgage process. Do you understand? A lot of people do not even understand this mortgage process. So I think the more we disseminate and demystify the mortgage of it, unfortunately, you know, the word, how do you break it down? So we had a radio program sometimes, and I kept saying, it will allow you to pay shikini money. That was the best I think I could to break down the word of the mortgage. So I would say that yes, Nigeria is large, but there are structures in place to be able to reach them. It's just that, you know, definitely to call people together into a hall, people, even though you're giving them useful information, unless you promise there's going to be food and drink for them, they won't think it's worth their time. So it's going to cost some money.
So what do you think of this collaboration between CBN and PENCOM to allow pension contributors to access 25% of their money to fund a mortgage?
Honestly, that will be like opening the window for fresh air to come in. Truth of the matter is that mortgage needs a window. NMRC was created for that, to bring, you know, refinancing so that mortgages that are booked can be refinanced and it can come like a cycle. When we achieve that, definitely it cannot be a reckless arrangement. Do you understand? But definitely, even just a hope alone is building, bringing in something. Part of the challenges that exist is that even if you say there's no equity contribution, truth of the matter is that there are costs associated to even securing a mortgage. The cost is going to need to be a cash-out situation, and a lot of people do not have resources which they can. Do you understand? So it's going to be it's going to be a fresh air. It's going to be something that would help both the people, it's going to help the sector.
Absolutely.
And we're looking forward to it.
And I see you also have a referral program where people can earn commissions of some sort. Can you tell us a bit more about this?
Oh, yes. Number one is we've all learned that you do business, the only way to proceed, to progress, make any form of progress, is to achieve a win-win situation for everybody. So even a lot of the banks that we have MOUs with are banks that prior to now, do you understand, will think they don't need a small organization like First Home Mortgage Brokers. Do you understand? So the way it works is that all the profit that is available to be made, let everybody have a cut in it so everybody can play their part. And so 100% of a zero is still a zero, but a 10% of one is something. So I think that's the thought process behind that.
Well, you yourself, you made the point that many Nigerians do not know what mortgage is all about.
Yes.
And you have had people approaching you saying
I want a mortgage
they need a mortgage to buy a car.
Yes.
Right. They don't quite understand that it's a home ownership program.
Yes.
Now, but what does a mortgage broker do? You're a mortgage broker. Can you explain that, for the benefit of...
If you didn't ask me that question, I would have left here very displeased. Yes. As a mortgage broker, we represent you. We have in our kitty, we've understudied all the products of the mortgage banks. As I said, even some banks we have MOUs, we've understood their product. You don't belong to the sector. There are transactions that you come with, assuming you're even talking about ordinary business, commercial transactions, and you mention a bank A. I'll tell you, don't bother. Bank A won't do that kind of a transaction. I can tell you who would do. So what we've done, we've understudied all the products. So what we prefer to you is what is going to be suitable for you. So we are not representing the institutions, we are representing you. So we can tell you the product. Once we come, we evaluate your affordability. That's where we start from. So from get-go, once you've taken the pre-qualification test, we'll be able to see, and when I tell you that your affordability is just for a 5 million naira house, even if you had given me a bank statement that didn't show that you have a current loan going, do you understand? You'll need to come up front and say, oh, yes, I know why, because I have a current loan. And I say, okay, give me the details of that loan. We incorporate into it, and I say, you know what? Pay back your loan over 18 months, and your affordability goes to 7 million naira. So we help you to be able to, one, achieve your goal of home ownership very, very quickly. Two, we'll be able to profile the most affordable kind of mortgage. It's not because we represent your interests. As I said, people don't know that you don't make money from real estate when you're selling. It's when you're buying. So when you're buying, particularly for people taking mortgages, I'm very passionate about the fact that you buy the houses at the most affordable prices. So most people, when they come for this mortgage procedure, they already identify the property. I'll collect the details of the developer, and I said, this person is taking a mortgage. She can't afford a 70 million naira house. There's somebody I'm working with currently. The property she had seen was 150 million. And I told her, you know what, don't worry, let me deal with it. If the developer will not accept 100 million naira, I'm going to get you another property. You understand? So those are the kind of services that we do. And then because we're talking to large numbers of people, we can negotiate cheaper rates.
Well, we've run out of time.
Thank you very much.
I wanted to ask you the
so
percentage that a person should pay for a mortgage, but we've run out of time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We've learned a lot.
Thank you so very much.